those that you file during the immediate transportation entry. But the duty rates that you file for immediate for special under special permit for immediate delivery will be those that you file 7501 at the time of filing 7501. That would be the most important reason, in my opinion. And of course, customs examiners, they like to give you hypotheticals right around the time when the duty rate changes. So keep that in mind. This is why this procedure can come into play as a very important duty-saving mechanism. And of course, another situation that we have is when it's authorized by headquarters. So it's a catch-all provision. It's not listed in none of the above. You can ask the commissioner, you can ask the headquarters to authorize because you have some kind of special circumstances. And the reason for that to exist is because you cannot predict and you cannot foresee and regulate everything, every possible situation. So what they've done is they listed most of situations and they discussed, they said just in case if we have a situation which doesn't apply, you can talk to headquarters and they can give you a break. So what would be customs examiner's position on this? How would customs treat this, all right? So let's talk about the so-called quiz breaks, okay? This is actual questions about the topic from customs exam, and one of the things they test on as far as special permit for immediate delivery is something like this. They say which statement is true. Of course, this means that 4 of the statements here are false. To the tariff rate quota, remember the tariff rate quota, notice special permit for immediate delivery. So this is a special permit for immediate delivery question. And we're talking about, of course, when the quota period ends and the quota period filled. Well, we know that you pay at the higher rate quota rate. And the correct answer in this case, if the entry summary is not presented timely, the port director may issue liquidated damages for late filing, which is true, of the entry summary, and the high over the quota. This is key. Over the quota, duty rate must be paid. Of course, if it was absolute quota, then the absolute quota would require exportation, destruction, or entry for the warehouse. So what about the other one? Here's another one. Which cannot be released under special permit for immediate delivery. Well, remember those situations. Is it a government entry? Is it contiguous countries? Is it the fresh fruits and vegetables? Is it the split shipments? Is it disassembled articles? What is it? So you need to identify here the situation. In fact, you need to identify here the false situation. And here, of course, we know the US government is okay, trade fair is okay, the Canada and Mexico, so this alone would be okay, right? But Canada and Mexico is definitely okay. And tariff rate quota is also fine. Absolute quota is also all right. But public exhibition is really the type of situation which is not listed specifically. It can be imported, let's say if there is a trade fair, right? You have an article which is on trade fair for public exhibition. So, but it's kind of like a derivative question, because if this is a good example of how customs examiners think, how they're asking you to answer. They give you an answer, but this answer, the public exhibition, it is possible to have the public exhibition under the trade fair. It is possible to have public exhibition by the U.S. government. You can have a, I don't know, the Federal Museum. The Federal Museum, let's say, I don't know, let's say U.S. Marines Museum in Washington, D.C. That's a Federal Museum, bringing in things for public exhibition, right? So this situation can fit this and that. I mean, I cannot think of fruits and vegetables example, but I guess if you have a USDA, United States Department of Agriculture has a huge collection of seeds that it takes from worldwide, and it plants them and does various types of research in the United States. So many of those situations can be described for the public exhibition. But notice, this would be a derivative thinking, the second level of thinking, saying what if, right? Here customs examiners usually say, look, we have specific situations and we specifically list them. This one is not specifically listed, so this would be the wrong, the correct answer, because it cannot be, without more information given, qualified for the special permit for immediate delivery. Let's talk about the next one. So the next one talks about the gives you a hypothetical. You have so-called SAM, who brings in the merchandise which is subject to tariff rate quota. And that quota expires on March 31st. Remember, I was talking about the time limitations. And so notice, when you read this underline, tariff rate quota, you have tariff rate quota which expires on March 31st. It's relevant because otherwise you have 10 business days or the tariff rate quota expiration date. And it's whichever comes first is the duty rate that you apply. So the merchandise is released under special permit on 27th. And the quota fills on March 29th. So it fills already. And entry summary is filed on March 30th. SAM must do which one of the following with respect to merchandise. And because March 29th, when he was out of luck, notice the tariff rate quota here, it presumes the following. The tariff rate means that tariff rate ends on a certain period, and also tariff rate can get filled before that. If it gets filled before that, then you're also out of luck. So they ask you, customs examiners are basically asking you to analyze this, but at the end of the day they ask you to understand when are the duty rates become applicable. And in the case of the special permit for immediate delivery, it's the time when you file the entry summary with the CBP 7501 with estimated duties attached. And the entry summary is filed on March 30th, which is beyond March 29th. So had the tariff rate quota has not been filled, he would have been okay, right? Because it expires on March 31st. But he lucked out. And because he lucked out, he must pay the duties at over the quota rate. And this is another example of looking at the various situations and how customs examiners like you to test on this topic. And remember, I mentioned the state, New York City, and the state, New York State, that they have to pay duties. They have to pay. They also are not exempt. They are not qualified for exemptions such as the federal government. So because in this situation we have a state or local, those are the key words, not United States, this means that it is not qualified as the US government entity. So let's continue on the application. The form is 3461, and it's our usual bunch: the packing list, evidence of right to make an entry, commercial invoice. CBP custody. So notice, the notion of CBP custody means that you don't really need to pay duties. And the notion of the CBP custody, it means that it's kind of a constructive notion, meaning that even you have a possession of the merchandise, you place it in a warehouse, you can inspect it, you can segregate it, it is still in a CBP custody. So customs in a way has a constructive possession, and this fiction, this legal fiction allows you to pay duties at the time of entry, not at the time of the immediate, how should I say this, not at the time of the release of merchandise to your premises. And of course, here's a laundry list of the things you can do after you receive the release. So we talked about, we talked about the consumption, right? We talked about the warehouse. We talked about you can transport it on a rail to Canada. This would be one example. You can, let's see, withdraw for consumption with duties attached from where? So warehouse withdrawal. You can export it. You can bring it into the country on a rail. You can destroy it. So it's just a laundry list of all the situations that we came across already. It's nothing new. Just to drive the point home that the release equals customs custody, equals that you do not, the duties only apply once you file entry summary CBP 7501. Or in the case of immediate transportation, if you do the IT, the duties that are applicable, they would default to the immediate transportation rule, which would be the time when you file the IT entry, the 7512. Next. Let's see. Time limit. So release means that you released it, it's in your premises, those strawberries under the special permit for immediate delivery. How much do you have? Well, again, we discussed this, it's 10 days. How are customs likely to test on this type of situation? Well, here's one example. You have a mobile, which I believe is Alabama. It comes on January 28th. You file the documentation on January 30th. On the entry, then you process the entry, and it was authorized for release. So, see, now that I look at it, I am not really sure if it is even for the, it is applicable for the special permit for immediate delivery, because really it is applicable to the regular release. The reason I put it there is because customs examiners, in the answer, they gave the special permit choice. But you can really apply it to the other situations as well, right? The regular situations, such as the entry itself. Take a look. So, mobile 28th. So, it hits the border on 28th. Then, you file entry documents. And what can be the entry document? It can be the special permit for immediate delivery, but it doesn't have to be. It can be 3461 with just in a regular form, right? So that means that you have what? You have 38th, right? 30th. So you have 2 days. Next, without making a request. What does it mean? Without making a request. Why is that important? Because remember the time of entry rule. The time of entry means that when you have various situations to the time of entry. One of the situations is if the time of entry is a time when customs authorizes release of merchandise. So it's released, you have it, it's time of entry. However, what about other situations? The ones that customs likes to test you a lot on, where you make a request, meaning that the merchandise is within the port limits. It can be on a dock, it can be on a ship waiting to unload. Then you file the entry documents and you make a request on the entry documents. Please use the date of filing as the entry date, because that date will determine the date on which your duties are applicable. Now, once you figure that out, customs can, let's say, they inspect it, then take a week. They take a week to release it. The moment they release it, the duty rates that are applicable, if you make the request, will be the date you file the documents, not the date customs releases it. But if you make a request for release, the customs, you do not make a request for release, the rates of duty that apply would be the date when customs did release it. So you have that window. And customs can take, you've seen, I think we covered exam questions where it took customs as long as 6 months to make a release. So keep that in mind. And this is why they say, because the moment they file, since they didn't make a release, then the rates of duty that will be applicable, they will be the rates at the time of release. So the entry was processed on January 31st, and the merchandise was authorized for release on July 1st. The entry summary must be filed within 10 working days after the date of release. Right? After the date of release. If the request was made, not without, but if you take that word out, then it would be C. Everyone sees why? So the entry summary must be filed.
If they request, but it's not authorized.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not talking about the duties. Yes, they're talking about the documentation. The entry summary must be filed within 10 working days after the day the CBP releases authorization. CBP's release authorization. So 10 working day rule starts from the date of release. Since the customs made this, the customs examiner specifically mentioned this. And I don't think they even said it. So in a way, I would hesitate to say it's applicable to others, because if you have a regular entry, the regular entry has to be filed within 10 working days of filing CBP 3461. That's the default rule. So how would you recognize this on the exam? How would you recognize that this is immediate, the special permit for immediate delivery? How would you? I would have a difficult. I would say this is a difficult question. So I'll assign it for the homework. How's that? I think, huh? Oh, it was already? I already signed it? Okay, so I'm ahead of the game. Okay, the way I would look at it, folks, is the key word, authorized for release. Authorized for release. And the time limit for filing the documentation and the authorized for release used in conjunction with two would be indicative that the question deals with a special permit for immediate delivery, even though they don't say it explicitly here. I would just make a note of that, and when I look for the buzzwords, as we should always, we say release and entry documentation. and this would indicate that they are looking for the special permit.